Howdy, I'm the Chinese Zodiac Killer, and today I'm not wearing any pants. In my previous video, I discussed my experiences of when I made physical contact with a non-human entity in the fall of 2020 on a remote island in the Adirondack wilderness. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend viewing and sharing it. While I remarked in the previous video as to how I discovered the possible identity of this being by observing the data stream of the simulation we exist within, in truth, I can only make an educated guess as an experienced occultist as to what it was. Was it an extraterrestrial, a ghost, a cryptid, a demon, an angel, a god, or an interdimensional entity? Also, I must consider other possibilities. Is it possible that someone was utilizing unknown technology on me, such as someone linked to the US government or a foreign government, or someone completely independent of any government? To address these possibilities, I would immediately remark that I am positive that I wasn't hallucinating. First of all, I don't have a history of schizophrenia or any kind of mental illness relating to hallucinations. As stated in my previous video, after my arrest by the FBI Terrorist Task Force, I was examined by a forensic psychologist who specifically told me that I was not schizophrenic, which I knew. Likewise, I wasn't using drugs and don't have much of a history of drug use to begin with. Point of fact, my experience wasn't related to drugs or mental illness. As far as the possibility that I was dreaming goes, I didn't even have a bed or a sleeping bag with me, and the environmental conditions surrounding me were uncomfortable. I was on an island, and the only comfort I had was a cheap folding lawn chair I had brought with me to sit in. I was definitely not asleep. Certainly, as remarked in my previous video, hours of ecstatic prayer and worship to gods and demons had definitely resulted in a heightened state of consciousness, followed by a meditative state when the being manifested. But I certainly wasn't asleep or dreaming. Lastly, to address the possibility that I was being screwed with by some individual with unknown technology, certainly this is a possibility, although I don't believe it. The technology does exist to manipulate our thoughts and emotions with frequencies and microwaves, it is said, and likewise realistic holograms do exist, and the US government does have an extensive history of experimenting on its own citizens, unawares to them, and human rights abuses. Nonetheless, I'm certain that my experience was the result of decades of practice as an occultist, ecstatic prayer, and raising my state of consciousness, culminating with a meditative trance state. Likewise, the fact that I felt the touch of the entity when it poked me both times only strengthens my resolve that the experience was authentic. That then raises the question as to what this entity was. While in my previous video I remarked as to who I was being shown this entity was, by observing the answers given to me in the data stream of the simulation, always being suspicious of illusions myself, I still question the identity of this being. Certainly, it was not a ghost. It just doesn't fit, nor do I believe it was some sort of cryptid. While contact with an extraterrestrial certainly seems plausible and exciting, I likewise do not believe this was the case either. There was no UFO sighting, and this being phased in and out of reality. Even the term extraterrestrial implies a terrestrial being, meaning that it should strictly exist in physical form. This being was clearly interdimensional. In the works of Carlos Castaneda, this being could certainly be analogous to what Castaneda describes as an ally. An ally is an inorganic being often found within desolate areas of wilderness that could be comparable to a demon and forms a relationship with a sorcerer who has raised his consciousness and power enough to establish visual and physical contact with the ally. Eventually, the sorcerer is able to subdue the ally and then has the ability to access the ally's powers and summon it. As an occultist, I postulate that even the highest archetypes, such as deities, still have some similarities to allies to some extent. As discussed in my previous video, my hours of ecstatic prayer to specific gods appeared to have brought me into contact with one, yet, without using traditional methods of summoning described in Western magical systems such as the Goetia or Goetia, where the practitioner specifically conjures in intended demons using ceremonial tools in conjunction with the sigil and infernal names related to any particular demon. The methodology I typically use, entering altered states of consciousness through prayer, meditation, and such, is more similar to that of Castaneda's methods, which create some ambiguity as to what exactly manifests at times. All I can say is that this experience especially pushed my understanding of reality to the brink of madness and was just one more experience that contributed to an extreme change in my behavior, resulting in my engineering of a publicity stunt to get mass media attention to my discoveries, including that we exist within a simulation, resulting in an arrest by the FBI and a cover-up by the government while using character assassination to label me as the Chinese Zodiac Killer, as discussed to some extent in my previous videos. Follow and share, check out my previous videos, and stay tuned for more discussions to come on my experiences with non-human entities as an occultist. Don't touch that dial. For a complete record of my experiences with the occult and supernatural, pick up my book I published on Amazon Books under my pen name, A. Crowley, Necronomicon MMXX, spoken as Necronomicon 2020, the Book of the Howling Beasts. We are the Order of the Black Dragon. Join us.